Let's take a look at the questions on homework 24. The first 3 questions ask you to use the Pythagorean theorem to help you find the missing side length of the right triangle. Now there are 2 legs in a right triangle, and those are the sides that make the 90-degree mark. The legs are A and B. It doesn't matter which order. The C is the hypotenuse, or the side across from the 90-degree angle. Be sure to put your values into the correct letter space. So for our first example here, I'm going to label leg A, B, and the hypotenuse C. Now I know where to put my values. 7 is in the A position, 10 is in the B position, and the C is our unknown side. Notice each value gets a square. Use your calculator to compute if you don't know what 7 times 7 or 10 times 10 are. Once we've added these values together, it's time to isolate the letter C squared. The inverse of an exponent is a root. Since the exponent is a square, then we will use the square root symbol. The directions say to the round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So I'm going to open my calculator here. I'm going to type on the screen the square root using the second key and the x squared button of 149. Because this is irrational, I'm going to get a very long decimal. This number 2 right here is in the 10th place. It's either going to stay at 2 or round up to 3. The number next to it tells you what to do. The number next to it is a 0, which is not high enough to round us up. So the answer is going to be 12.2. Let's do this again for question 2. Label the legs and label the hypotenuse. 7 squared plus 2 squared is equal to C squared, or 49 plus 4 is equal to C squared. Don't forget, you're not finished until you get rid of this power of 2. The opposite of a square is a square root. Use your calculator to find the square root of 53. Rounding to the nearest tenth, this time, is going to be 7.3. Because the 8 after the number 2 rounds it up. This last question is a bit different. When I label my legs, those are the 2 sides that make the 90-degree mark. The hypotenuse has a value this time. So when I put my numbers in the right positions, this time, the A is missing. So I'm going to need to use my calculator to square 9.7. And I need to use my calculator to square 13.3. Now you'll notice that the letter A is not by itself. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of inverse operations here to isolate that letter A. So I'm going to subtract 94.09 from both sides. When I do that, I finally get that A squared alone on the left-hand side. So I'm going to subtract 94.09 here from my previous answer. I'm going to get 82.8. Don't forget to take the square root on both sides. The square root of 82.8 is 9.1 when you round to the nearest tenth. Let's take a look at the next section. Write the new coordinates of point A after a reflection in the x-axis. Well, the new point will be called A prime. and a reflection over the x-axis changes the y sign. So our answer will be 3, positive 2. Number 5, write the new coordinates of point B after a translation 2 units up and 3 units left. Well, the new point will be called B prime. And up affects the y value, and left affects the x value. So negative 7 minus 3 is negative 10, and 4 plus 2 is 6. Number 6, write the new coordinates of point C after a rotation 90 degrees clockwise. The new point will be known as C prime, and when you rotate 90 degrees, you swap the numbers in the coordinates. After you swap the position of the numbers, you change one sign. Since we're going clockwise, that means we'll change the sign of the second value, or the y coordinate. Number 7, write the coordinates of point D after dilation by a factor of 1/2. This means I'm going to multiply each number by 1/2, giving me point D prime. 1/2 times negative 6 is negative 3, and 1/2 times 4 is 2. Question number 8. Which ordered pair prevents the following set from being a function? If you're a function, you can't have any repeating x values with different y's. No repeating x's with different y's. So which one of these would cause a repeating x? Well, let's see what the x's are. 1, 2, 3, 3, 5, and 6. So it seems like these two here are a problem. You're not a function if you have a repeating x value. So 3, 4, and 3, 6 are the points that prevent it from being a function. Question number 9. Which equation represents a linear function? A linear function has to be able to be written in y equals mx plus b form. That means no square root signs, no variables in the denominator, and no powers other than 1. That means this one is the y equals mx plus b sentence. Let's take a look at the next section. When we're solving with parentheses, we need to distribute. Then we need to isolate our variable by using inverse operations. And don't forget, the property of equality states you have to be fair and perform the operation on both sides. Now sometimes you might get a decimal answer. Sometimes they want you to leave it as a fraction. So 12 divided by 24 as a decimal is going to be 1/2 or 0.5. So you can leave it as a decimal or you can leave it as a fraction. If you're not sure how to simplify a fraction, you have to use the fraction key on your calculator. Find that fraction button somewhere. It will look like this. When you type the original numbers in and press the Enter key, it will simplify the fraction for you. For the next question over here, we're going to multiply 3 times 2 and 3 times negative 3x. On the other side, we're going to multiply negative 6 times x, and be careful here, a negative times a negative is a positive. Use your inverse operations to move terms from one side to the other. I'd like my x's to be on the same side, so I'm going to add 9x to both sides. Then I'm going to subtract the constant, and my final step will be to divide. Last section. This one is on transformational geometry. It asks you to graph the translation of this triangle ABC, 4 units left and 3 units down. So I'm going to start at each vertex. I'll start with A first. 4 units left, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3 units down. 1, 2, 3. This will be the location of my new A prime point. I do the same thing with B. 1, 2, 3, 4 units left. 1, 2, 3 units down. B prime. Go to the original C vertex and count. 4 units left. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3 units down. Then connect each vertex to draw your new shape. Let's do the same thing with question 13. A reflection over the x-axis, which is this line here, means that all of our y coordinates are going to change points. It also means if you used to be 1 unit above the x-axis, your new location will be 1 unit below. So I'll start with point A. It is currently 5 units up, so I'm going to stay on this same vertical line and move it 5 units down. So this is where my new A prime will be. B prime and C prime. The last question asks you to describe in words the effect a reflection over the x-axis has on the triangle. Well, the triangle is exactly the same shape, it's exactly the same size, it's just in a different location. So that's what they mean by describe the effect. What parts of triangle ABC are congruent to A prime, B prime, C prime? The first thing we want to say is the triangles are congruent. Angle A equals angle A prime, angle B equals angle B prime, and angle C equals angle C prime. We could also talk about the sides. The distance from A to B is the same as A prime to B prime. The distance from B prime to C prime, the difference from B to C is the same as B prime to C prime. And the distance from C to A is the same as C prime to A prime. You can use these notations, or you could simply write the sentence. All angles and all sides are congruent. So you can write it in English with this sentence, or you can write it in math using these notations. That concludes the examples for homework number 24.